Hello, this is Eric Michael Lloyd. I wanted to read an article from www.insider.com. This is referring to the manipulative tactics psychological abusers use in court to keep control over their victims. This one was um, written by Lindsay Dodson on July 29th of 2018 at 5:05 a.m. It has a couple bullet points here. The first one is survivors of abuse sometimes decide to take their abusers to court, but this can be traumatic for many reasons. For starters, it means seeing their abuser again. It also means abusers have the opportunity to manipulate the court system and re-traumatize their victim, gaining control over them again. Or the last one is to make sure they remain in control. Survivors have to make sure they are prepared. Imagine someone who you thought you loved. Imagine someone who you thought loved you, turned your world upside down and sent you through emotional turmoil for months or even years. Imagine you finally break free from their abuse and gaslighting, but they keep coming after you. Imagine that to be rid of them for good, you have to take them to court for their abuse. Then imagine they win. Every year, victims of domestic abuse, both physical and psychological, have to face their abusers in court. Sometimes it's to protect themselves and any children from further harm in family court, or to secure a conviction against their physical abuse in the criminal court. It's a basic human right to be treated fairly by the justice system, but unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. In May this year, a report by Women's Aid and Queen Mary University of London found that 24% of survivors of domestic abuse were cross-examined in family court by their abusers. This was over a year after the government in UK promised it would stop this humiliating and appalling ordeal from happening. I felt so ill having to sit there and go through it, Catherine, a survivor whose name had been changed, told The Guardian. He was following his own agenda and asking me about previous boyfriends and my sex life, things that were completely irrelevant to what we were discussing. Half of what he was asking me, he should have never been able to inquire about, but the judge was telling me to answer. The Women's Aid report also found that 61% of survivors said there was no special measures in place for them, such as separate waiting rooms to the abuser, different entry and exit times, or the possibility of screen or video links to avoid face-to-face contact. These lack of measures protect survivors from abuse during the court process, harms their ability to give evidence, and prevents them from effectively advocating for their children in court, the report reads. The court is an abuser's stage. Abusers take advantage of the court's shortcomings and will use it as an opportunity to keep controlling their victims. They'll use every trick up their sleeve to make their victim look hysterical, according to psychologist Perpetua Neo, and those who particularly enjoy the experience are often abusive narcissists. It's not trauma behind closed doors anymore, she said. It's like, here's the stage. I'm going to discredit you and make you look like an idiot. They will try and shake the victim, and will often succeed. They know exactly what tales to spin to charm the jury, and what lies to provoke the victim with, so they end up looking like the unstable one. Essentially, abusers don't care at all if they lose the right to contact their ex or child. It's about knowing they still have control. Even pre-love bombing, they are probably doing their research on you, stalking you, and trying to find out who you are, what makes you tick, and what makes you weak, said Neo. And because you feel this false sense of intimacy, they're going to tell them a lot of things. You're going to tell them a lot of things. All of the stories you told them will come out in their cross-examination. What exactly is relevant court case in a family court case is a bit of a gray area. And if there are judges who are ill-equipped to deal with the nuances of an abusive relationship, victims have no control over how many intimate details of their private life are smeared across the courtroom. It was horrible. It was the worst thing I ever had to do in my life, one anonymous survivor said in the report. The cross-examination was just disgusting. The questions were about my sex life, previous boyfriends, and who was going in my house. It was ridiculous. Never underestimate the ammo your ex-abuser has on you, Neil says, and know that they're going to use that against you. The court, the judge, the jury tend to see a person who is destabilized as lying or mentally unsound, Neil said. So the worst thing you can do is let the abuser's mind games work. Of course, you're going to feel traumatized, she said. Being destabilized, shouting, crying, and all that stuff is actually just a way this trauma expresses itself. But they don't know. It's your duty to actually learn how to present yourself in the right situation. You have to stay calm, another anonymous survivor said. You can't show emotion. You can't get upset. If you get upset, well, you're unstable, and you're not healthy for the child. They know what buttons to push. No matter how much faith you have in justice, if you're up against an abuser who knows what they're doing, there's a chance they might win. In her book, Exposing Financial Abuse, When Money is a Weapon, Shannon Thomas wrote about how people control their partners with money by withholding it, getting their partner into debt, or stealing it from them. In one story, a woman went to court over child support following her divorce with her husband. He managed to convince the court he could only pay her $500 a month, despite purchasing a yacht, a new car, and a waterfront condo for himself. In another story, a woman was ordered by the courts to pay her ex tens of thousands of dollars in damages, despite him being the one who was abusive to her. It's stunning and not a good way at all what happens. It's stunning and not a good way at all what happens in the court system, Thomas told Business Insider. I've seen a lot of folks who will commit fraud. They will fraudulently put in papers that show their income is different. They will intentionally be self-employed or will work for companies that are shady and willing to give them false documents. Abusers know there may be one day where they have to go up against someone who has become wise to their manipulation. But because they've done it their whole lives, they know their best chances are winning over the judge and jury and making the victim look like the perpetrator. I'll finish this video in just a second.